Hi, I'm Chris, horror filmmaker and fanatic, here to explain how scary things are. Today, I'm talking about Stranger Things Season 4, newly released in 2022. 8 months after Season 3, our main cast is split between 3 storylines. With great divides in both distance and heart, this season boasts the most complicated and difficult journey for our heroes yet. In Hawkins, our main crew investigate a series of mysterious murders that hint of a single powerful force creeping its way out of the Upside Down and into our world. In California, Eleven's new life proves difficult for her to adjust to, especially after losing her powers. Fighting dark forces within her in a world that doesn't fully understand her, she must find a way to regain her powers and sense of belonging. Finally, Joyce Byers seeks to journey to Russia when she finds out Hopper is alive and being kept in a gulag with forces from the Upside Down threatening his life. Rotten Tomatoes score of 89%, audience score of 90%, a little bump up from Season 3, and also almost perfectly matched, which is very rare. Of course, this is a Netflix show, so we don't know the budget, but I think I saw something about 275 million or whatever. It was definitely a lot of money, and it was also viewed heavily, so, we don't know box office, but it's Stranger Things, and it was huge. Today, I'm going to be breaking down what makes Season 4 of Stranger Things scary in 4 key categories, breaking down all the different ways that people can be afraid while watching anything that's meant to scare them. As well, I will also give my own little review and critique of the season as we go along, and if you haven't seen the season and you don't want spoilers, then definitely skip to this time code where you can just see an overview of the categories, and I won't give away any spoilers for the season whatsoever, and you can just know if I liked it or not. And if you'd like to know my opinion on the first 3 seasons of Stranger Things and how scary they were, then click the link that just popped up right above me where you can check out that playlist. And as well, I will be releasing a full spoiler deep dive analysis of the season later this week where I give my full in-depth review, so definitely check that out when it comes out. But without further ado, it's time to find out, how scary is Stranger Things Season 4? First category, the thrills, the intense, heart-pounding excitement of horror. Season 4 is the most thrilling season yet. I think no one who's watching this video that hasn't seen Season 4 would disagree with that. The scale was big this season, not only with the split storylines and so many characters and plot lines going around, but the importance of the Upside Down and Vecna and bleeding into our world and the end of Hawkins and our world as we know it. Like, the scale is huge, and with that, there's so many thrills going on. Almost every episode had something big that happened that makes you go, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? And that's why the thrills are really high. With past seasons, I had thrills kind of going down because there was always like early episodes that just kind of felt like, all right, but nothing really happened in that episode. Like, can we get back to the tension and the conflict? This season did a good job of keeping that conflict and tension going throughout it. So that's why the gradient begins already pretty high. My favorite highlights for the thrills have to be that one-shot shootout in the middle of the season. That was really crazy. And then of course they flexed on us again with another one-shot action scene in the Upside Down with the main 4 fighting against those weird bat things. We also got Max's escape in episode 4 where she almost died and then she managed to escape through the power of love and music and all that. That was both emotional and also incredibly thrilling. Hopper was always in thrilling situations at the prison arc, especially when he's battling against the Demogorgon, both in episode 7 and episode 9. Anytime Vecna showed up, just period, basically affects every single category in this video, but of course thrills, it was definitely thrilling when he's killing teenagers. And then it all culminates in that big epic finale where so many things go on, but of course probably the highlight has to be Eleven versus Vecna, their entire kind of back and forth battle. And then of course the reason why this gradient reaches the absolute top, because I was thinking about that, all right, how can I actually define when we reach the top of thrills, right? I realize it's when you actually can't increase the scale anymore and the thrills are at its highest peak, which is the finale, because the entire setting of Hawkins is now basically hell because the Upside Down bled in, and it happened. The thing that we've kind of been waiting for since the beginning. Uh-oh, the Upside Down getting into our world. It happened, and now the entire world is at stake, and you can't really get higher than that with thrills. So yeah, that's why this gradient actually reaches the tippity top finally. Well done, Season 4 of Stranger Things. You were thrilling. Next category, the grossness, the disgusting stuff that your mom doesn't want to look at. Season 4 stepped it up in the grossness category a little bit, especially with the lower end, because previous seasons had to go all the way to the bottom where like, all right, nothing gross ever really happened, right? Well, this season, pretty much every episode, something gross would pop up on screen and be like, ooh, okay, that's pretty freaky. And we reached even a little higher highs than previous seasons. There's some gross stuff. Vecna, of course, when he's breaking bodies and showing weird, scary zombie-like people and visions and stuff, all that's kind of freaky and gross. Hopper's messed up foot early on in the season, that that was really hardcore. They really did a good job with the makeup and prosthetics of that. That was definitely really cringy to watch, just him pulling the chain off. That was And with that, there was also just a general heavier focus on blood and gore this season. In seasons past, they would have hints of it, but they wouldn't really focus too much on it. They would kind of hide it because the show is still kind of PG-13, sort of meant to be for all audiences. But this season actually focused a little bit more on it and really kind of showed, all right, this is some messed up stuff. Here we go. And some of that's a little gross. And then I think this might be the grossest thing yet in the whole show. Victor, the surprise appearance of Robert Englund, his eyes, they're like stitched up and there's like pus coming out of them. And that reveal was legit gross. That was, oh, okay, all right, that's freaky. So yeah, that's why we broke records with this season in the grossness category. So season 4, keep it going. Next up, shock value, the surprising, disturbing content that you didn't expect to see in this PG-13 family-friendly-ish show. And just like the previous category, season 4 stepped it up in the shock value. This will be addressed in the next category, but overall, everyone knows that season 4 was a darker, more mature season. And with that, they also showed and displayed more shocking, disturbing stuff than previous seasons. The immediate highlights, Vecna's killings, just right away showing teenagers and their bodies just being contorted and broken and their eyes popped out of their sockets. And just those images alone are pretty shocking. And that happens at the end of episode 1 right away, and happens several times throughout the season, especially when it happened to Max. That was really freaky because we liked Max, and that was really sad to see. And like, oh no, they actually did it. But rewinding back, just every episode kind of had a highlight that was like, wow, okay, I didn't expect the show to go there. Hopper's entire prison arc was constantly shocking because it was some hardcore torture stuff. It really was hitting hard. I think it lost some of its power once he tried to escape and then came back. I think before he tried to escape, it really felt like this prison was just messed up and he is stuck in hell and he could die at any moment, basically. But then after he escaped and then came back, suddenly some of those hardcore things weren't happening anymore, and I wasn't quite as afraid as I was previously. Another storyline early on that I thought was definitely really shocking, Eleven's dark turn when she bashed Angela in the head with that roller skate. That was dark. I really liked that a lot. I really liked seeing Eleven go a little dark because it makes sense. She has been in a lab most of her life. She doesn't really know how to socialize with people, and when you're pushed too far and you don't have your powers either, and you're so angry, and she just doesn't really realize like her actions have consequences in the real world, like, yeah, she would do that. And it was hardcore. It was pretty dark. The entire backstory of Vecna is also very shocking, from the fact that he killed his mom and sister when he was a kid and was sort of always just kind of a psycho, like, evil person to begin with, but then dad getting framed for it and his dad removing his own eyes, and then we kind of see the aftermath of that with the gross reveal of his pussy eyes. Like, all that was very shocking. And then the season began with it, and thank God it wasn't 11, but finally seeing the payoff at the end of episode 7 and Vecna being the one to massacre everyone at Hawkins' lab. They showed the dead kids. They showed a few kids with their eyes out of their sockets. Granted, it is CGI clearly, and so that kind of detracts from the actual shock value of it. And that's sort of the same with Vecna's killings. When the teenagers getting all broken up and freaky, you can tell it's CGI, so that kind of takes away from it. But anyway, back to the dead kids, right? Yeah, that's fun. We got dead kids, and that's shocking. And just, yeah, he massacred everyone, and that was pretty shocking. So yeah, more shocking stuff. Max, her entire storyline is my favorite part of this entire season, and it really dealt with dark, dramatic material that the show hasn't really attempted yet. And I also found that the way they handled it was really well done and had a lot of nuance and didn't really just paint this huge, oh, she's depressed and sad in your face. Like, there was a lot more going on with her, and it was believable, and you understood her inner conflict. And so there was this genuine fear of like, okay, like, Max is very depressed, she kind of seems a little suicidal, like, is she going to be okay? And then after she almost died and then was saved, then it was like, okay, good. But then what was really cool in the finale, she gives this speech that in some ways is meant to be painted as like, okay, maybe she's just trying to lure Vecna back by saying like, oh, you're right about this and this, I want to die. But in some ways it also felt genuine, where she said like, I kind of wish that I would die as well. And that was really well done and very dark as well. And then Vecna, of course, twisting that moment and then possessing or pretending to be Lucas and basically saying like, oh, it was your fault that he died and all this stuff and you deserve it. And it was like, whoa. Like, these are genuine dark thoughts that people who deal with depression and suicide, that's what really happens in their head. And so that was really dark and well handled to then kind of see that be painted in a horrific atmosphere with that. And then then right after that, I found it very shocking out of nowhere, and they just gloss right over it. The bully guy, I forget his name, there's too many characters in this show, but he shows up, messes everything up, and then gets defeated. And then when, the Upside Down is bleeding into the world and the world is splitting, he's laying there and just actually physically gets split open in half. Just like, oh, and he's also dead. The end. And it's like, whoa, that guy just got split in half. Oh my God. And that one got me. I was like, wow, okay, the show just pushed right past that. That guy's dead too. Moving on. It was like, wow. So yeah, the shock value reached some new records as well, and kind of kept things on a little smaller scale. You know, it's a PG-13 family show, so it's not going to be super duper high with the shock value, but especially for the context of the previous seasons, this season stepped it up. And the final category, the most important one, atmosphere, the overall tone and feeling of the show. How well is it building up that fear? And with Stranger Things, I got a problem because they can't stay consistent. Every season gets more silly and more ridiculous and more comedic and all of that. But then this season also stepped up the horror. Everyone knows they stepped up the horror, and I will agree, because as you can see, it's the highest it's been yet with the previous seasons. But at the same time, it's a big gradient because this show keeps being silly and funny, and I really didn't like that part of the season. It's mostly in certain storylines, like the entire Russian storyline. Once you enter the middle of the season, and especially once Yuri shows up, there's just, it's too much comedy and too much wacky, we're just on a little adventure, and I just don't really feel that tension. And then a lot of the storyline in California, especially once 11 splits off from the main crew, that crew no longer in horror territory. They literally were just in a huge shootout, and an agent died right in front of them. Does not matter. They are still joking around. Argyle is still just a stoner, and every line of dialogue has to be a comedic line of dialogue, which is just too much. It's like a formula. Every scene, it's like, all right, Argyle will say something funny. This character will say the plot. Boom, boom, boom. And it's like, oh my God, let's just get on with it. Let's try and be more consistent. We're nearing the finale now. Let's stop with this fun, silly stuff. Let's get to the serious matter. But then the actual serious dark stuff, it stepped it up. Vecna is a legitimately scary villain, and when he shows up, he does scary stuff with all of his trippy visual possessing with people and messing with their heads and hearing that clock and all the different spaces that they're moving around in where it's all dark and they're kind of running away from him and they're afraid of him. That's all really scary and really well done. The characters are also all in high school now, so any of their kind of more just childish storylines are now more mature, and they're just kind of dealing with more adult themes. And while I think the characters definitely feel like they're in danger throughout the season, there's still a little problem where some characters are just kind of naturally badasses for no reason, and then they're able to battle the evil forces and win. And so there is detracting from that terrifying dark tone is also this sense of heroic adventure and victory, which, this season sort of is like an Empire Strikes Back thing, where by the end it is like, they still kind of lost, like 11 lost and the Upside Down is here. But then at the same time, there's still this huge sense of like, but we got this, like we can fight against this, and just not enough characters actually get hurt and die. And so when Vecna says for the millionth time, you will lose, everything will be gone, it's like, okay, but you keep saying that, and I haven't really seen any of that happen yet. The only characters who ever die are side characters or newly introduced characters, and sometimes they're really good. Eddie's death, very, very tragic. I was really sad about that. If Max had actually died, that would have really hit me, especially after she had almost died, and that was my favorite part of the whole season. But then after that, it's like, we just had so many different things going on, and there's only so many times that the characters can escape the threat before I just don't think the threat is actually that threatening anymore. So that's why this gradient is all over the place. I think for a horror atmosphere, we've reached the newest highs. When it is horror, when it is scary, this season rivals regular horror films in my opinion. It is genuinely freaky, but at the same time, the show still has to be family friendly and PG-13, but then also just it spells out way too much with all of the comedy and silliness, and it's like, focus in on what the story is and keep that tone consistent. So that's what you get with that huge gradient there. Yeah, there we go. Moving on. And here's the overview of all the categories. Quick non-spoiler reviews. As you can see, the thrills are the highest it's been yet. This season is a thrilling season. The main thing is that you can definitely tell this is like the penultimate season, and the scale is just escalating, and the thrills are really high up there. Every episode has something exciting going on, something thrilling. So the thrills really high up there. And then in the grossness, we got got some grossness going on. Compared to previous seasons, I would say there's a little bit more and a little bit more consistent with the grossness. So there's some little bit of disgusting stuff. There's nothing that's actually going to freak you out necessarily, but there's a couple good stuff in there. And then shock value, we got a little bit more shock value going on. There's some stuff in the season that you probably wouldn't have expected the series to really go, but it's diving into that darker territory. And then with the atmosphere, we've reached new highs with the show legitimately going into horror territory and being genuinely scary, but at the same time, it still has a lot of silly comedic moments, and certain storylines just aren't really horror-centric, so that's why you got a really large gradient there. It goes all over the place, but when it goes for the dark stuff, it actually goes for it. Final thoughts on Season 4 of Stranger Things. This might be my favorite season. It's really hard to kind of compare it to the previous season, especially because this season was like double the length of a normal season. I really appreciate that it feels like things are really wrapping up and that the whole story is coming together finally. It's really bringing back things from previous seasons, and the focus is kind of slowly getting back to what the core story was in the first season. I really love the focus on horror because I think they do a really good job with it when they decide to do it. I do think the show needs to pick a tone and stay with it, and if it wants to be silly and comedic at times, keep that in the early parts of the season and also tone it down because it's getting way too much. It's turned into a farce, and I don't like that. If you've already watched seasons 1 through 3, then you'll probably watch season 4, especially if you like those previous seasons. I do think that this season is better than season 3 and probably better than season 2 as well, just objective quality wise. If you're watching this video and you haven't watched any of Stranger Things, or maybe you stopped early on and you're like, okay, does this show actually get good? I actually would say the show is getting better. I was feeling like the show was past its prime because every season was kind of going a little bit down for me, and season 3 was my least favorite, but season 4 definitely stepped things up and had some really cool stuff that I'm glad I watched it. I got something out of it, and I think that a lot of people would enjoy it. And that is how scary season 4 of Stranger Things is. Don't forget to check out my video coming out later this week where I give my full deep dive crazy analysis and review of the season and all the ways that I think the writers can fix the show for its final season, assumed final season for season 5. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, comment and subscribe and share all of these How Scary videos with anyone that you know or interested. I really love just making these videos, and I hope to really grow this channel into something big someday. All right, that's it for this video. See you in the next one.